The 2018 World Inequality Report was released, and in two charts, you're about to see the difference in income inequality between the US and Europe. This is really telling. Top 1% versus bottom 50% national income shares in US and Western Europe, 1980 to 2016. Diverging income inequality trajectories. So you see, the top 1% makes over 20% of the national income. The bottom 50% makes about 13% of the national income. So look at that. The bottom half makes significantly less of the national income than the top 1%. That's way out of whack, and by the way, that's unsustainable, and there will be another economic downturn probably very soon. Then you go to Western Europe. Let's look at Western Europe. Wow. So the bottom 50% in Western Europe makes about 22% of the income, and the top 1% makes about 12% of the income. So you have a much more stable system, a much more reasonable system. You know, the way they divvy up the national income there makes sense. So it's not like the top 1% isn't wealthy. Of course they are. They make fucking 12%. 1% makes 12% of the national income. But that's not extreme is the point. And you have the bottom 50% making 22% of the national income. So, in other words, there's still income inequality. It's not like everybody's making exactly the same, but it's reasonable, and it looks a lot more like a meritocracy. So, this shows you how we've gone to extremes here, but there are still places around the world that have policies in place that make the economy rational, for lack of a better word. So let me tell you what the economists that did this report say. They say the income inequality trajectory observed in the United States is largely due to massive educational inequalities combined with a tax system that grew less progressive despite a surge in top labor compensation since the 1980s and in top capital incomes in the 2000s. Continental Europe, meanwhile, saw a lesser decline in its tax progressivity, while wage inequality was also moderated by educational and wage-setting policies that were relatively more favorable to low and middle-income groups. In both regions, income inequality between men and women has declined, but remains particularly strong at the top of the distribution. Okay, so, very simple, man. What they're saying is there are real-world policies that affect this, and it's the exact ones that you would expect. So, progressive tax rate, for example. Yes, you go to Western Europe, and they have a much higher marginal tax rate. I don't know the exact numbers, probably over 50% for their top marginal rate. Here in the U.S., our top rate is, 38%? Okay, well, what's going to happen in that situation? You're going to have the rich be way richer and the poor be poorer. So that's one issue. Another one is unionization. So when you have a decline in unions like we do in the U.S., that's going to hurt the middle class, and that's going to hurt working families. When you have stronger labor unions, yes, that's going to help the middle class, and that's going to help working families. And the list goes on with these kinds of policies. Minimum wage, for example. That's something, I'm not sure the exact situation with that in Western Europe. I know some places don't have minimum wage laws, but they do have unionization laws where basically everybody's part of a union, so everybody makes a decent wage. But take Australia, for example. They have a minimum wage of about $17, a little over $17 an hour. Well, turns out if you're on the bottom rung of the economic ladder, you're going to be better off in Australia because you make more than $7.25 an hour. So this is all stuff that you can honestly file under the category of a more progressive tax rate that helps working families, that helps poor people more. Also, a better educational setup where, you have free college so people aren't saddled in over $1 trillion of student loan debt. I mean, that's important. That's going to help people a lot. Not having healthcare bills, that's going to help people a lot. And so when you mix all those things together, better healthcare system, better educational system, more progressive tax rate, better wage laws, more unionization. What happens? You get the system like we see. They have a more reasonable distribution of their income, and we have an insanely backward system where you basically destroy the bottom 50% of the population and make it so they can't get by. And the top 1% is just, it's record levels of income. It's obscene amounts of income and wealth. So there you go. And by the way, myself and Bernie Sanders and Justice Democrats, what we're asking for is, hey, let's be a little more like Western Europe. That's it. That's it. Now, we're going to be, they're already strawmanning us like crazy, and they argue like, they want communism, they want Venezuela. And that's just not true. And when we give our reasonable response of, well, look at these two charts, here's the income inequality between the U.S. and Western Europe, shouldn't we be more like Western Europe? Their response is, they have no response, so they will immediately start strawmanning again, and we will just have to keep explaining ourselves and letting people know we want a system that makes life a hell of a lot better for poor people, for working families, and this is a choice we make, guys. That's the point. This is a choice we make. We can choose as a country to make life a hell of a lot better for working families and poor people. It's not like written in the laws of nature that we have to sit back and let the rich get all the income and have all the wealth and everybody else gets screwed. No. We can choose to fix that. And that's what we want, and that's not what the other side wants.